So I know there were a lot of questions about technology tonight. The thing that we want to talk about tonight is this concept of being a Google district. And what I think we get hyper-focused on sometimes is looking at the devices the kids have in their hands. They bring with them to school. There are districts in this country that don't have any devices in their school. They don't have kids with cell phones. They don't have internet service at home. But they're a Google district. And leveraging the power of being a Google district, we're able to give their students the same amount of technology in their classroom by maybe the teacher having a device and integrating the kids into that device. Or having kids use the public facilities, the library, public spaces that have Wi-Fi. So to me, the most important thing that we've done as a district is to go Google, because Google is our backbone. And at this point, very successfully, we've integrated Google 4th through 12th grade. So at this point, 4th through 12th graders have Google accounts, which means that what they see in 4th grade, they're going to see in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, all the way throughout all of their years in Peabody. It's consistent. When teachers train on Google products, it's something that's not going anywhere. It's not a company that's going out of business. It's a company that's forward-thinking and that's integrated into the real world, the business world. Businesses are slowly changing towards the Google products. One of the reasons is they're reliable, they're secure, they're safe. People have fear that Google is not as secure as having maybe an internal network. But that's slowly changing as cloud security is becoming more and more secure, as just Google is becoming more integrated into schools. So this presentation is just meant to give you a brief introduction of what it means to be a Google district and how that is so much more important no matter what device we get, no matter if we go bring your own device, or kids use cell phones, or kids use Chromebooks. That Google platform is not going anywhere. So what does it mean to be a Google district? We're part of this organization, Google Apps for Education. And Google started this several years ago when they considered, unlike Microsoft, which wants to sell you a product, Google said, we want to give this program or these series of applications to districts for free because we want to champion education. And Google Apps for Education works very similar to the Google Suite you can get as a personal user of Google. All of the apps are free. But what Google Apps for Education allows us to do is to have a cloud-based, meaning that we can control it from any computer that is connected to the internet, way of monitoring the entire system. So in past years where we had to physically put our hands on every computer to make sure that that computer was compliant with the way that we wanted it to work, we now have the ability not to worry about what computer a student's using, to worry about what account they're using, because that account has the same settings no matter if they're using it in your house, or they're using it at school, or they're using it on the road, any device they're using it on. As long as they're signed into the school account, it's going to give them the exact same view and the same security settings. So this idea of Google Apps for Education is very powerful in that way. I'm going to show you a really short video which introduces you to what Google is thinking and how Google Apps for Education works for a district. hyper-focused on education. And it's their mission that, not to get necessarily their products in every classroom because they want to sell you something, because again, Google is free in the real world. They know that. So they have thousands of experts working on what are the best tools to help students learn. And what Google was able to do successfully before any other company was to realize that when students learn, they need to work together, they need to collaborate. And what Google was the first company to really do in education was to allow students to connect digitally. So one student could be in one country, another student could be in another country, and they could be sharing ideas at the same time. And that idea of collaboration works the same way in this school, where a student can be working on the computer in the lab, and they can be in another classroom, and they can be in another part of the building all at once and working on the same essay, editing it together. That idea of collaboration is very powerful for students because they don't have to be alone anymore. They have the ability to work with others. And think of all those group projects now that you don't have to actually schlep your kids and drive them to someone else's house. They can work now digitally using the Google suite of tools. So Google does have a lot of benefits that empower kids. So how did we start on our idea of using Google in this district? Well, one of the first changes that we made was we moved over to Google Gmail. We used the email product first. And that was something that we moved all of our teachers over to. And at first, we didn't necessarily consider all of the abilities that Google had. But over the past 5 years that we've had this Google Gmail in place, teachers, before we even started doing any professional development or integrating students into the Google atmosphere or the Google framework, teachers started learning, hey, there's all these apps that Google gives us for free that we can use and use with students. So a lot of teachers just started experimenting on their own. And they realized that Google offers all of these tools. And these tools are the same tools that you would get in a personal Google suite of apps that you might be using in your business or in your personal life, but we're using them now also in the educational world. So Google Calendar for organizational purposes, which who knows, someday may replace agenda books because it offers a very similar concept of students being able to track their own needs and track what they need to accomplish. Google Drive, which is the folder system that we use, which is similar to Microsoft Word or Excel and PowerPoint, but it's all digital online. So now students, this was the biggest problem we were having in the district. Family A has one computer that's 10 years old and has an outdated version of Microsoft Word. And family B has a modern computer. So when the kids work together and they keep sharing files back and forth, it doesn't open up the same way on everybody's computer. Then they send it to the teacher at school who has a different version of PowerPoint, and now the whole thing is corrupted, and the kids are upset, and the parents are upset, and it doesn't make any sense. Whereas with the Google apps, they're updating constantly, and they're updating online. So we're not worried about who has what version. It's always updating. It's always the most current version on the device that you're using, because it's all cloud-based. Google Plus and Google Hangouts are more tools maybe for the high school. Those are communication tools. Hangouts is like Skype if you're not familiar with it. And Google Plus is somewhat of a social media tool, but it's also a tool to communicate with people from around the world. Google Photos is a newer app. If you have an Android phone, Google Photos is a cloud-based photo server, so that any photo that you take all goes to one place, all connected under your Google account. So when students do work in school where they're taking photos, they can have all those photos organized and collated under Google Photos. They don't have to worry about where that file went. And Google Photos for education, this is the most amazing thing. Unlimited storage space. So when your kids are making videos and doing pictures and doing art projects and saving them online, they can save however many they want, and it'll never end, at least according to what Google's promising us at the current time. But your personal account for Google has a limited space. The educational one, unlimited storage space. And then Google Sites is a website maker that Google offers as well.
There's an iOS app for Google Photos.
There is an iOS app also for Google Photos. This is the one that you might have heard the most about recently is Google Classroom. Google Classroom is probably the greatest invention they've made in recent time. What Google Classroom has done is it said that all of the apps are really great, but really they're business-minded. They're not focused on helping students to put everything together. Google Classroom is now a platform that takes all the Google apps and puts them in one place so that your students can find all their classes in one place. That each student's class, so each section of a class, science, social studies, math, English, all of the pages are the same format. So it's almost like the old, having the school web page, but now you have the information from the school web page plus a space where students can complete their homework assignments. So just to give you an example to show you Google Classroom, if you've never seen it before, students log into Google Classroom just like they would their email. And when they go to the Google Classroom page, they see all of their classes up on a dashboard. And no, there's no parent portal at this point, like some websites may have. But you can always feel free to ask your students, just give me your email, give me your login, or just show me what you're doing on Google Classroom. And through this dashboard, all students have to do is click on their class. And when they click on their class, it's all organized in exactly the same way. They have a stream that's very similar to like a Facebook page or a Twitter page, which gives information, announcements, whatever most recent. There's an area where they can submit assignments, and there's room for personalization from teachers. So teachers still have the ability to make it look like the way they want to, but also students can see consistency. You're always going to have everything in the same place no matter what class you go to. That consistency is super powerful, because if you have a 4th grader who learns Google Classroom and they go to 5th grade, it's not going to change. They go to 6th grade, they're going to see Google Classroom. They go to high school, they're going to see Google Classroom. The same apps, the same format. And as Google changed, it changes for all of us, though. We all move together. So it's a consistency, and it's something that we can rely on, because we know it comes from a company that is not going anywhere. Another really powerful tool that we looked at in the middle school, actually, in the last PD, is YouTube, which I know to some parents is the scariest thing in the world, because there's crazy stuff on YouTube that you don't want your kids looking at, and that's why YouTube came out with YouTube for Schools. Isn't that a great logo? You know, it looks very professional. YouTube for Schools is the ability for us to blacklist certain YouTube websites. And if we go down to elementary school, we can have a whole elementary school that decides we're going to turn YouTube off except for these specific videos that teachers want to watch. Everything else is blocked. So that power that we have, not for anybody to do, but for like Mark and I, for example, to be able to put in those websites and block them. And when teachers want certain YouTube videos accessible, we can easily, within a few seconds, turn it on. And that power is really great, because we can still utilize this amazing tool, which I'm sure many of you know is changing the world. It's the most used video website in the world. Easy uploads of videos, lots of crazy stuff on there. But with crazy comes lots of brilliant educational tools for teachers to use in the classroom. And we have the ability to filter out what we don't want. So I talked all about that first before I even mentioned this, because this is just a device. We had Hour of Code this week in the library, and I was telling the 7th grade students, computers don't think. They don't have any feelings. They don't have any emotions. They don't matter. I can throw this in the trash and get another one. Google's not going anywhere. This is going to change. 3-4 years from now, we might be talking about widget books. I mean, they could keep coming out with new technology that keeps changing. The Google platform, though, is staying as our backbone. So that's what really is great about this Google product, that it's reliable, it's made with a company that we can trust, we know that it's going to be around for a long time, and no matter what device we use, it's going to be there for us. So now we talk about the power of giving students more devices. As we have more devices, we allow students to be able to use them in school and at home. So Higgins Middle School next year is going one-to-one, which is just a fancy way of saying students will be taking home a Chromebook that will be issued to them at the beginning of the school year. Now, a lot of the nuts and bolts and protocols we haven't formally established. We do have a pilot, though, in place this year. We're working with one 8th grade cluster, the Pisces cluster, where we're testing out what are the best practices. We're looking at other schools. We're having people come in, teachers observe what's going on in the classroom and saying, is this a good practice, or do we need to change the practice? Mark and I are running a pilot with how many are breaking, how many kids are losing their Chromebooks, how many are being left at home, how many need to be charged. And what we're developing is almost like a big FAQ. What are the answers to these questions? What's the likelihood that it's going to break? How many, what's the percentage of kids who need to charge their Chromebook every day? So we're coming up with these answers through this pilot, and we're going to have a great program for you starting next year in the new school, offering you the ability to learn more about it, to come learn about the Chromebooks, to possibly have parent education nights where you can learn how to use the Chromebook as well. That's our big goal as well. And then to use these Chromebooks in an effective way. because obviously just giving kids Chromebooks is not going to change education. So we've already started that. We've done an amazing job here at Higgins through Mr. Busey's leadership of really giving us time during our professional development to work as teachers to figure out how do we best use these devices. Because just putting this in the hands of a teacher is terrifying. And putting it in the hands of a teacher and a student with no professional development is even more terrifying. And we're not going to waste our money to buy these devices if we don't know what to do with them. And at least in this district, we really care about teachers understanding what they're doing with the Chromebook, and that the point of the Chromebook is not the Chromebook. The point of the Chromebook is learning. It's a tool to learn, like any other tool they have in the classroom. So this is really the big emphasis we had in the district. These are the 4 most important things of why we want Google. We want to foster critical thinking. Students understand themselves. Foster communication so that students can use technology in order to communicate with the outside world. Collaboration so they can work together. And creativity, they can invent things. And when you look at business journals, this is what businesses want from people. They want people to be able to do these 4 things. And we have a lack of this in this country for a lot of people going into the workforce. And we feel that not just technology, obviously good teaching has to come with it, but technology is yet another tool that helps us to lead us to these 4 C's. And then, of course, they always come up with like these fun little graphics about everything that we do with technology. This is the Gaff Train, and I'll give everybody the link to this presentation if you want to look more into this. But it basically points out there's all these different tools that are offered. Google Drive, Google Docs is like Microsoft Word, Google Slides is like PowerPoint, Google Forms. You might have noticed that some of your students are taking tests online now, and teachers have the ability for students to walk into class, take a 5-question multiple choice test, and within 5 seconds it tells them what they got right and wrong, and the teacher has data that they can use to figure out what they're going to do with the rest of the class. So 75% of the kids miss this question. That's what class is today. Never before we had the ability to quickly assess students in such a powerful way that we can leverage data to better understand what our students need. And when students know that that data is really affecting them, and when they know that they're going to have answers immediately, I think students are really empowered by that. Because the quicker we can give students answers as to what they know and what they don't know and where they need help, the better students are going to be able to learn. So we finish off with, what are the top 10 reasons to use Gaff, which is the fancy word of saying Google Apps for Education. Unlimited storage, like I said. Documents are saved automatically. Imagine a 4th grader, they're typing a paper, and then they walk away from the computer and someone else goes on. That document was saved. They didn't have to do anything. They forgot to save it. It was saved. Imagine a 7th grader, same thing. You know, it doesn't matter what the age is, right? So automatically saving documents is very powerful. Live time collaborating. Live time collaborating is 2 students working on the same project at the same time, live. It's not one student has to email a document, then open a document, another student emails a document back and forth in 7 different versions. It's the same document accessible all the time. I'm just going to skip down to number 9. No software required, which I'm sure Mark really appreciates. We don't have to put anything on a computer. It runs off any browser. And number 10, probably most important for taxpayers, it's free. But being free is not the most important thing, obviously, but being free is a big plus. It's something that we can commit to because we don't have to worry about figuring out how we're going to budget it for the long run. We know that it's going to be a consistent tool that we can have access to. So that's just sort of an introduction to Google as a platform, because we need to focus on Google as a platform before we talk about Chromebooks, because really that's our backbone. So if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them. If you have any questions you think of in the future, then I'll put out my email and I'll let you know if you wanted to email me or Mr. Busey and get that email information to me. So thank you very much, unless you have any questions.
I just have one.
Yeah.
My son is a Pisces and he is using it this year. And the thing that I do find extremely frustrating is the fact that there are no books anymore and there are no checks and balances for a parent. So he's saying it's done and I'm checking and things of that nature. He had a crossword puzzle and some work that he had to do for social studies, and we could not find that data anywhere in the social studies folder. And I'm wondering, I love to have a book. I'm a paper person, and I'm trying to embrace this paperless world that we're living in now. So I'm just kind of curious, what can I do to get more information to try to, it took us literally 2.5 hours to try to do a crossword puzzle.
Sure.
And we ended up even going on Google to try to find answers, but the questions were so big, it was nearly impossible.
So something I will say about the Pisces cluster being a pilot cluster. Some of the things they're doing, we're going to have to change for the future. Some of the things that they're doing, they're working really hard to make sure everything's online, or some things are paper. But again, because it's their first year, it is transition. So I do see, that's something I'll definitely bring to Pisces, talk with them about how we can better accommodate that. But those are things that we can work on. If a parent notices something about technology they're having trouble with, to bring that forth to the cluster, and then with my position and Mark's position, and Sudi, we can work with that cluster to figure out what is the problem, what's going on, and how to better accommodate it. Because that shouldn't happen in the long run. You should have a way of accessing what to do.
The book should be in there
Well,
somewhere?
in some cases, it will be in there. Like, for instance, our math textbook is digital. Our social studies textbooks now are not digital. So that needs to be better communicated, perhaps. That's something that we're going to take into account when we issue all of the information at the beginning of the year, to tell parents, if you're having problems, please contact us. But the math textbook and the new science curriculum will be more digital, whereas the English curriculum and the social studies curriculum may not be. But to make that really clear, so you're aware of that ahead of time.
Okay, thank you.
To her point, nothing beats pen and paper. We lose power, we lose anything like that. We find that the younger generation now can't function without technology. And the only other concern, and it's a constant struggle as a parent, as technology takes out sociability with everyone. So you talk about schlepping them over to Johnny's house to do the project. Well, maybe they need to be with Johnny to do the project. So that's a concern. Everything that you're showing tonight looks fabulous, and it's a whole different world. But that would be my only concern about kids working in the same room as other kids versus kids looking at a screen. You commonly go out to restaurants and you see families of 4. They're not talking. Everybody's got their device out. It's crazy.
Did you want to ask something, Sudi?
Yeah, I do. We had Hour of Code today here in the library for the 7th grade. We're reaching the entire 7th grade cluster. Hour of Code is sponsored by code.org to try and encourage people to go into the field of computer science. It's National Computer Science Education Week is when they do Hour of Code. I wish you could have been here today when we had 100 7th graders all in here using the iPads, using the computers as teams, collaborating to figure out how to make this game work. And the noise level, if you came in, you would have been like, what's going on here? But it was a good noise. It was kids talking to each other, working with each other to figure out how to solve the problem. And that's the way we foresee in the new school, with the technology, that we're going to be able to foster collaborative learning with our kids. And they were so happy. Even the teachers were coming up and saying, I'm going around, they're all doing it. They're not trying to go on, Sports Illustrated. They're working on code. And just as Dr. Levine said, you give them something they want to do, and they'll do it, and they'll be respectful of it. And I think that they're so ready to embrace this collaborative environment that we're just seeing it more and more as we have more and more devices and are using them in group situations. When you think of the new library, they're not going to have to come to the library to get to that computer anymore. They're going to have their computer all over. So what are we going to be doing in the library? We're going to be doing collaborative learning.
And then to speak to your 2 points. So one about writing. Writing has to remain essential. We're not getting rid of writing. And I don't like the term paperless, because paperless is not a reality of any world, right? We don't have to be a paperless world. We can be a less paper world. It doesn't have to be paperless, though. So the concept of handwriting, the concept of doing math with a pencil, that's staying in place. I don't foresee that going anywhere, because I do think there's, and the rest of our school believes the same thing as we've taught, that there is an inherent growth to student learning when they do things written out. Take notes, for example. Some students need to physically handwrite out notes in order to learn the material. And if that's the best learning model, then technology can go to the side for that student. If another student is going to learn the best by typing the notes, let them type the notes. So I think it's not so much we're forcing technology down every student's throat. We're saying that now with this choice, we can better personalize what's going to help students the most. So that's how I would look at it, more so than we're all changing to a new paradigm and forget everything that we've done in the past. And, go ahead.
You know, it's a balance that we're seeking to find. So we're trying to find that point where we're using it as a tool in the classroom, but we're using it to a point where teachers feel comfortable that it's not replacing something, as Jared had mentioned. You mentioned at a meeting we had not too long ago that it will never replace paper and pencil. We just don't expect that to ever happen. But part of the pilot is that we're talking to the teacher how much they're using it. Is it too much? What is the right amount to use it to make sure that we're not overusing it? We're certainly in agreement with you.
I'm an IT guy, so I mean, I'm probably the person that uses technology more than anybody else in this room. And I still walk around, when I do tickets around the building, when I have a list, I walk around with a clipboard with a piece of paper and a pen. Because I used the iPad for a while, but it just wasn't the best tool. And I'm not going to just use technology because I have to. It just didn't work for me. And I mean, you know, as the Pisces cluster, you'll walk into the Pisces room and all the Chromebooks are closed and they're doing other things. They're not using them all the time. It's a tool, but it's not. It's not replacing anything.
And I'm glad you shared what you shared. You know, my wife and I struggle with my son. Unless he's going to be a doctor, his writing is atrocious. I feel for the teachers that have to read his writing, you know, and if technology is always, well, he'll just be typing later on in life. Well, you know, that was one of our concerns. But, you know, I work in an industry where we try to, you know, concentrate on customer service and one-on-one, and even they are going to mobile pay and mobile ordering and all this stuff, which takes away what I love, I guess, as a dinosaur as I get older, is that one-on-one conversation. You know, I tell my kids wonder why I don't go to the automatic checkout. You know, because the automatic checkout doesn't ask how my kids are if they're not there. Gladys knows my kids, you know. So, I mean, I struggle with it myself, so.
And the second point to what you said, I think the most powerful use of technology is when students are not working independently. I think the independent use of technology is great for writing an essay, taking a quiz, but when you put a student, even if every student has their own device, in a circle with another group of students working on a project, they're working on the project. They're using the computer as a tool for immediate information when they need it, for immediate creation of whatever they're doing. They're building a three-dimensional model, but they're doing it collaboratively. They're talking it out. So what I was talking about with working in different rooms, that's a feature. We never had that ability before. But I don't think that's necessarily that's the purpose and the direction that we have to go. It's a feature that when students want to use that, they can. When students work together, they have immediate information they never had before. So that's the change that empowers students, that they don't have to keep asking the teacher, I don't get this, I don't know. Where do I find this information? How do I look this up? They have the device to do it. So they have the ability to really take control of their own learning and really use the teacher as a facilitator more so than they have to listen to what the teacher knows because they don't know anything and they don't know where to find it.
I want to assure you that we will have paper books in the library. We will also have e-books. And those e-books, depending on how we purchase them, a whole class could download the same book into their Chromebook. They can sign into their library account to access that book. The book will allow them to take notes, will allow them to highlight, and then when they return the book, and the best part about this as a librarian is they don't even have to return the book. I can just go grab it out of the device. So when that happens, all their notes and everything stay in their library account. So all these new ways of getting information and accessing it, the kids take to it like second nature, and it's magic when you see it happen.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to be showing my age, but in high school, we learned keyboard, like the proper uses it. I just watched, like, when I write notes and things like that, my kids are like, why? How do you do it so fast? And I watched them on the computer, and I'm a physical therapist, and I just think of mechanics and
Well, I know here that Higgins, our writing teacher, does a typing club. some plans long-term that Jerry can share for digital citizenship and bringing in typing as an early skill that has to be developed at the elementary level.
Because right now we are looking at elementary school technology curriculum, because it varies so much between buildings right now, that we are looking for more consistent skill development, so including typing, so that when students converge at the middle school, they come with a shared set of skills, including that ability to type, which will only enhance their abilities and eliminate the carpal tunnel at an early age, right? Because not typing.
And I just watch him, like, sometimes he has the thoughts in his head, but to
Right.
sit there and try to find
Can't find the keys.
so it doesn't make it efficient sometimes for him to do his work, and so you lose that thought process and everything else.
Although I can see them do this so fast.
Right, on the phone, but like on the computer.
Both
or
things.
not.
But I agree that they need the writing skills and the fact that penmanship versus printing, all of that seems to be going through either a rebirth or a recycle or something in terms of how we should handle a little bit of everything.
And that Google Docs actually has a voice-to-text recognition that's actually superior to Dragon Easy Read, that picks up, similar to how Siri is able to listen to what you say and turn it into a text. Google Docs has the same ability. So for some students who struggle with typing sometimes, to just speak out their thoughts, and it just starts writing exactly what they're saying, and then they go back and they do all of the editing. And that sometimes is the best way that a lot of our teachers are dealing with students who have problems typing.
It's so great that you came out tonight and that you're interested in this. And we would like you to be our ambassadors and let other parents know that we want to share what Google is doing for us. Anytime that there are groups of parents together, we'd like to put you on the air. Thank you, Jerry. You did a great job.
Thank you.
In your feedback, I'd like to hear if you have any suggestions of how we can get the word out best to parents. From your experiences, what media or what format might be the most all-encompassing to get parents the ability that if they can't come to a forum live, what might be the next best thing? What might it be something on PATV? Might it be something on a website? Might it be I'm just curious as to what might be the most effective means of getting information on printed materials. If anybody has any thoughts.
No, just sixth grade has like a Facebook page, and there's so much, like that's how I realized about this meeting, because I had a first meeting, I haven't gotten involved just yet. But that's how I knew about it, so I was like, oh, that's cool, there's like a way to attach those videos so that if someone,
But posting on Facebook is what you're saying might be the best way for parents.
It seems like each grade has a Facebook page, and we all communicate on
The
the
parents.
grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
See, that's news to me, so that's good to know.
And elementary schools, a lot of them have their own PTO pages,
PTO
or
Facebook.
parent pages.
Okay.
How about a district
Give information.
Facebook page? Do you think that there should be a Peabody Public Schools Facebook page?
that would be great. There is one for the citywide, but it's not updated.
And I'm noticing many of the surrounding school systems have Facebook
That would be
pages.
great.
For something like what happened at the high school today, to have a authoritative voice to say, this is what's happening. So,
Although the advantage to the individual classes is we're not dealing with the masses, so we're dealing with, so if, Abby forgets her homework, you don't have to go through a plethora of names and whatnot to try to get that assignment. So that it's kind of unique because it's pertinent to your child and their class. So it's been very helpful.
I think it would come to you versus you trying to seek it sometimes. I think it's a little easier.
And I've been making this suggestion since my daughter entered kindergarten, and I know that maybe we could put a page in the handbook next year that would have you give your email address. I know that there's a big privacy issue, but, we have 1,400 students, and I think our Facebook page, Higgins PTO, maybe has 300 friends. So we're communicating, but we're only communicating to 300 people.
Oh, for the PTO to get.
Just
That's what
anything.
you-
No, I think that if even if we put on our emergency form,
We,
you know what I mean?
oh, but we do. It's on the emergency.
But can
get
you
it to
share
you.
this?
You're right, so get it
Please
to
check
you.
this box,
Right,
can
right,
we share your
yes,
email
okay.
address? Yes, yes. It's the permission factor, yes. I think that'd be super.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
12 years?
Who's counting?
She's persistent.
That's fine. It's not, no, it's 12, that's it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm sure we don't know what snorkel is. We will not be going through another winter in the library with this climate. Next year, I'm hoping we're gonna have on-site temperature